Hello everyone. Welcome. Welcome to a very special presentation today. It is almost time for Passover. Passover is a week. It begins on March 27th. And on the first night of Passover, people who celebrate in the Jewish tradition have a Seder, and a Seder is a special meal. It is full of symbolism and tradition and ritual, and it is to celebrate that special time in our shared history, the time of Moses, and the time when the people of God were slaves in Israel, and how Moses helped them get their freedom. And we remember that when we tell the story of Moses, and we can share with our Jewish friends as they remember that same time with this special Seder celebration meal. So I am not Jewish, I was not raised doing this, but I respect it very much and would like to share with you as best I can the way the Seder goes. So it always begins with the lighting of the candles. And the oldest woman in the group is the one who lights the candles, and that would be me. The lighting of the candles invites the Spirit of God into your home and signifies the beginning of this special time. And they say that the match is not to be blown out, but it is allowed to go out on its own. And I have a recording of someone saying the special prayer that is said after the candles are lit, but this is what they do to get you into the quiet spiritual mood. 1, 2, 3. And here is what it sounds like.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu bidvaro, v'natan lanu et Yeshua Mashiachenu, v'tzivanu lehiot or laolam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe. You have sanctified us by your word, and given us Yeshua the Messiah, and commanded us to be a light to the world. Amen. And next we pray this.
Okay. And that begins the Seder. And here is the book that I got for us to learn more about it. Passover. Celebrating now and then. Now, people prepare the house. You sweep and clean like you would for any gathering. But you remove all the bread, every last crumb. And we'll see why. Now we set the Seder table. And I have many of those things, and we'll talk about them as we go. Now we have a Seder plate. And we place the symbols of Passover. Here is a Seder plate I got for us. This will be at FCC in our Rainbow Room or our Godly Playroom for you to explore when we can get back together. But for today, we will put the things on here for the Seder plate, and we'll talk about why. All right? We begin by lighting the candles and saying the prayer, which we did. And here is a family getting ready to begin. And as the meal begins, as the celebration begins, the first glass of wine is poured into the Kiddush cup. So here I have a bottle of wine and a Kiddush cup. All right. Now, one of the first things we put on the plate. Now, at a real celebration, the plate is already ready. But since you don't know about this and I don't know that much about it, let's do it together. The first thing, we have parsley and celery, sometimes potatoes, and these are called karpas. And there is a place on here for these things to go. These are the symbols of springtime, of life, of promise and hope. Then it was spring in the ancient times. Now we dip the karpas in salt water, and then we taste the bitter herbs. The salt water reminds us of the tears that were shed when the people of God were in slavery. We eat bitter herbs because the Egyptians made lives bitter for the people of God in all manner of labor in the field. And what's used for bitter herbs is horseradish. And horseradish is an actual root. Here's a picture of one. And it is ground up and made into a horseradish sauce, which is what many people use for the celebration. And if you taste that, it's very bitter. Oh, very bitter. Back then, this is a reminder, makes us remember the time when the people of God were slaves. A sad and bitter time. Now we eat a mixture of apples. I'll show you this. Apples and nuts. I have walnuts and raisins and some wine. And when you grind this up, you'll make something that is to remind you of the mortar that is used when you make brick. I'm going to just pour it out. You can see it. See how that looks like the stuff you put in bricks to keep them together? It's called haroset. That's the Jewish word for it, haroset. And this mixture reminds us of the mortar that the people of God mixed as slaves when they had to build temples and pyramids for the Pharaoh. The apples and the raisins make it a little bit sweet. And that is to remind us of the promise of a better world. Now we tell the story of Moses and the burning bush. Moses went up to Mount Horeb. Remember that in our story? While tending sheep on Mount Horeb, Moses saw a bush that was burning with fire, but it didn't burn up. From this burning bush, God's voice called to Moses, "I have seen my people suffering, and I am ready to take them out of Egypt into a new land." And God told Moses to return to Egypt with a message of freedom for the people of God, and to warn Pharaoh that if the slaves were not set free, God would send plagues to the people of Egypt. And here is Moses going to ask Pharaoh to let the people go. And do you remember what Pharaoh said? He said no. He said no. And so God sent 10 plagues. This is to remind us of the 10 plagues. Blood, boils, frogs, vermin or insects, beasts, a cattle disease, hail, locusts, darkness, and the last and worst, the killing of the firstborn of all the children in Egypt. The 10 plagues. This is a picture of the locust one. Now, the people of God were told by Moses, because God told him, that they were to mark their door with the blood of a lamb. And that would tell the angel of death to pass over that house, that it was a house of God. And they would spare those firstborn children. So Zeroah is the Hebrew word for this lamb shank. And in many Seders, that's what will go on the plate, is a lamb shank. But there are many of us who don't want to eat lamb. That's an old tradition. So a new tradition that is quite allowed is to use a beet in that place. Because a beet, the red juice of a beet, is very reminiscent of blood. And it will remind you, if you did this on a window or a house, it would also leave a red mark, like the blood. So we're going to put this in. All right. Let me wipe that. I'm going to get. And let's take a look at the picture. Here we go. So then the angel of death passed over the homes of the Israelites, or the people of God. Now we eat only unleavened bread. This is unleavened bread. It's called matzah. This reminds us of what the Pharaoh said after the 10th plague, when even his son died. The Pharaoh said, "I will allow your people to leave Egypt, but you must go very quickly." And the Haggadah tells us the Israelites baked their bread in haste, for they could not tarry, they could not wait, they had to go quickly. So if you do not bake your bread slowly and let it rise, it will not rise, it will be flat. We have matzah to remind us of fleeing fast. But the Pharaoh broke his promise. Now, one of the fun traditions and this happens at the beginning, a piece of matzah is hidden somewhere in the house. And that's before this begins, but I didn't want to show you that until you knew what matzah looked like. Now we raise our cups and we read from the Haggadah. You can sometimes hear that pronounced Haggadah. It just depends on who's saying it. I've heard it both ways. We praise Adonai, our God, because the Lord caused the waters to be divided. Do you remember that in our story? The waters moved back because Pharaoh has changed his mind and his soldiers are chasing after the people of God. And when they get to the river, how do they go? The river opened so that the people of God could cross over, could pass over to safety. And then the waters closed on the soldiers. And the children of God became free. And this is a place in the celebration where everyone has a glass of wine, perhaps their second glass of wine. People have 4 before it's over. The children have grape juice, so they are also given a glass for remembering the saving of the people of God. All right. Now we have a roasted egg or a boiled egg. And that goes on our plate too. And that is a symbol of life. And we see that in, the Easter celebrations as well. Eggs celebrate life, spring. After the escape from Egypt, the people of God wandered in the desert for 40 years and then came to their promised land. And there they grew in numbers and flourished. And after many, many years, they built the temple in Jerusalem. To the temple, they brought festival offerings in thanksgiving for the fertility of their fields and flocks. And the egg symbolizes that fertility and that offering of thanks for life. It's called a beitza, or baitza. Baitza. It says there, baitza. Now we're coming to the end. We open the door for Elijah. And we have a special cup of wine that we have poured for Elijah. Sometimes people say nowadays that we have this wine for Elijah and Ruth as well. But here is a beautiful silver cup that we have poured for Elijah. At the end of the Seder, we open the door to welcome Elijah to the table and to drink his cup of wine. We wait for the time when he will announce peace for everyone. And now we end the Seder. Oh, I don't think I showed you the picture. Here they are, just opening the door. All right. And now we end the Seder. The children look for the wrapped piece of matzah that was hidden at the start of Seder. Here it is. Once it has been found, it is broken into pieces, enough pieces for everyone at the table, so that the last taste of the meal continues to remind us of the liberation of the people of God. We sang songs to thank God for our freedom, and we end by saying next year in Jerusalem. That expresses the hope that all people all over the world will be free. I hope you have enjoyed our celebration and our talk about the Passover. God bless.